sadness, and you can view it in a negative way. But that's only because we're not seeing it as God sees it. God made the world and saw that it was good. From our point of view, we don't see it like that. Not knowing or understanding God takes away many of our problems. And nirvana, or nibbana in Pali, would be a term of negation in a sense. It's not the first time it's used. We've seen how it's used here in the Bhagavad Gita. It's described as associated with Brahman. See? So it's put in a positive way. But all it means is this, you see, when you strip away all the desires, when all of that gets extinguished from the mind, what remains? Now, clearly, you're right, clearly bliss remains. But bliss remains, we didn't achieve it.
It's always there.
It's already there. We just uncovered it.
Well covered,
yeah. And it comes out, you see, as a symptom, is reflected in such things as a joy for life, an appreciation, a desire for happiness. It comes out because that's our nature. Our nature itself is blissful. Now, Buddhism might not explicitly say that, because Buddha wants you to discover it for yourself. The Buddha wasn't keen on metaphysics. He just said, in one hand, I can tell you everything, Four Noble Truths. And then when it comes to a methodology, 2 hands only are required, an Eightfold Path. But all of it amounts to the same thing, by purifying the mind, by purifying the buddhi, that is the intellect, or the discerning faculty, the deciding faculty, the shining thing, or the thing that appears to shine. By purifying that, clarifying that, all religion is a process, and spirituality is a process of purification. Then what we're doing is we're uncovering layer after layer of ignorance, layer after layer of maya, a misunderstanding about reality. So there's an uncovering process that takes place. We often obviously think that spirituality is like any other endeavor. We have to start off here and we go off linearly to there. But that's not how it is. It's more of an uncovering. So in many places we find that. See, we find this idea of something being there and being apparently hidden. See, smoke is in the way of fire. See, the womb is in the way of the fetus. See, all these examples are given. So the cloud is in the way of the sun. See, well, when the cloud moves on, then how do we achieve that, is your question. So from this point of view, it doesn't really make too much sense. Of course, from a beginning point of view, yes, we should say that. We should aim for an ideal. But Jesus said, be perfect as your Father in heaven. Now, many people I've heard say, he didn't really mean it, or it's an impossibility, or something along those lines, because they're thinking human nature is intrinsically imperfect. How can you be perfect? But we're not talking about human nature as physical nature. We're talking about your own perfect nature. And be ye perfect is just a phrase because you are already that. This is the Vedanta point of view. It's not that you have to achieve it. It's not that you have to go anywhere. It's not that you have to go to Benares to get it. It's not that you have to look for it or train for it or get a diploma in it or a certificate in it. It's not that kind of thing.
Or go on a retreat.
Going on retreat is necessary. Why? Because that's a way of clearing things as well, you see. It's a way of taking things and removing them. It's an opportunity for stillness. What is stillness? It means there's nothing superfluous in the way. No riffles in the way. So it's interesting that we are making this study, and we just made the study of the 6th chapter of this. And on the other side of it, on a Sunday, we are studying Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Because you see, to commence a study on love of God, bhakti, yoga, which is intrinsically what is going to happen over the next 6 chapters, from 7 on to 12. The whole idea of personalizing a God or understanding a God or knowing a God, you have to know something before you love it. And so Sri Krishna is outlining what is this fullness that we call God. Many people claim to know God, but is it a partial view? When you gather the whole totality, how will you explain or grasp the whole totality unless you have what is called vijnana, realization about it? This equates also to nirvana. So a realization of it has to be there. So this chapter, 7th chapter, is called Jnana Vijnana Yoga. That is the approach, the way that combines knowledge along with realization. What use is knowledge without realization? Sri Ramakrishna puts it beautifully in a beautiful example. There are people who've heard about milk. This is a kind of superficial knowledge, academic knowledge, factual knowledge. But still an element of belief has to be there. Because the only way that belief gets supplanted by actuality, by unwavering conviction, is through a direct experience of something. And so the next thing is jnana. What is jnana? In the context, in the example of a milk, some people have heard about milk, they know it exists, is it describable? Maybe they Googled it, maybe it's on Wikipedia. But then somebody saw it, and that is called jnana. We know, because we have seen something. But blessed are they who have drunk it. And you see, as long as you see something, is a separation. But when you drink milk, is it not intrinsically a part of you? Doesn't milk become the physical body? Where's the separation then? So there's a beautiful example about the subject of this chapter, Jnana Vijnana Yoga. So knowledge and realization have to be combined, and before you can love, why should we love God? Because God is lovable. How do we know that? It requires an appreciation of a totality, and that is why this teaching is told in fullness. Previously, there was a part, the transcendent part, so to speak, is understood. But then, you see, it's the glass half full, half empty syndrome. You see, we're told that a pessimist says a glass is half empty, optimist says it's half full, but the realization is that the most optimistic position is the glass is not only full, but it's eternally overflowing. Where we see everything, whatever the eyes alight on, is that reality, which religion calls God. Whatever we hear is that reality. Whatever we touch is that reality. Whoever we see is that reality. Whatever we see is that reality. Be it above, below, to left or right, it's an all-pervading entity that we feel in touch with. And because there's a feeling of wonder, adoration, and thankfulness, that spontaneously evokes a feeling of love. And so the whole thing is explained. And it's also pointed out, and this is where we got to, I think, last week. And so I shall teach you in full this knowledge combined with realization, which being known, nothing more here remains to be known. You pack your bags and go home. But is realization such a cheap thing? Does it require some effort? First of all, we have to have an understanding of it. So vijnana is a direct grasp of the reality. And it comes about through a process of self-discipline. And self-discipline means going against the grain somewhere. This is what is called tapasya, something requiring heating, something requiring friction. Friction results in heating. Friction means I have to go against my norm. I have to change my habit. I have to go through a consciously constructed system until that becomes completely unconscious or habitual. So that's the level of training that has to be done. And so it goes on to say, and we mentioned this last week, it says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kashit yatati siddhaye. The word siddha is a curious term, and in this particular text, the commentator, in this case Swami Bhagavad, explains that there are many, many meanings to this term siddha. So, yatatam api siddhanam kashin mam viti tattvataha. Among thousands of people, scarcely one strives for perfection. And of those who strive and succeed, scarcely one knows me in truth. You see, blessed are the be perfect as your Father in heaven. Is it so easy? Well, in the beginning, you have to have an inclination toward it, an interest toward it. The vast majority of people are so tied up and entangled and so enticed by what they see. You see, I think it's St. Patrick's Day or New Year's. Either one, I think, probably. There is normally a huge display of fireworks. And I've been to one, an experience probably not to be repeated, because you have to wait in the cold and the rain, probably, for a number of hours to get your place. So there's a sense of anticipation. And then, of course, from nowhere, it seems, because we are not privy to see the pyrotechnicians establishing the position of the fireworks and then igniting them, and the technology that goes into it is a highly technical process, pyrotechnics. But when we see it, the whole crowd goes, ah, ooh, fantastic. What a beautiful display of colors and bursts of light everywhere against a dark sky. And in certain set patterns, sometimes even to music set. This is how beautifully, aesthetically they've done it. And so the world is something like that. It comes in sparks and bits and pieces that the eyes catch and the ears catch and all the senses catch, essentially. But at some point or other, and we all know it, it'll disappear. And maybe if it disappears, a child may be disappointed. So we know it's going to happen. There's an anticipation about it. We enjoy the colorful display. And then, alas, it's all gone. And we all go home, remembering the joyful experience we had. Now there's a reason why there should be a joy in life. So a glass half empty, glass full, why not full and overflowing, so that we see this glory everywhere. And when we catch the glory of the Lord, what is really called Ishvara, what religion calls God. But you see, there's not an extra cosmic God, not an extra cosmic entity in the sky. This is something which is a sum totality. Its nature here is divided seemingly twofold. We are designed to catch its lower aspects, and we always put it into a feminine, prakriti. The whole of mankind does that. Mother Nature is a common phrase everywhere. Mother Earth, everybody uses that term. Why? Because we find that everything, all the creation, as it were, comes from a womb of creation. There being no difference or separation between the mother and the outcome of the mother. The same process. So in Vedanta we find that not only is Brahman the material cause, but also the efficient cause. Not only the cause, the agency, but also the ultimate material itself, the material cause for the entire universe. Manifested from within, manifested, as it were, broadcast everywhere. We take the term Brahman, we find the inference is something that is eternally expanding, something in your visualization like a big bang somewhere. And we have remarkable symbols of this. Let's take, for example, and I mentioned before, the Sri Yantra, which is a beautiful subject for meditation. It is an interlocking triangle, series of triangles. And you can go from the outside to the inside. This is meditation, going from the outside to the inside, going from the inside to the outside. And so, Prakriti, or nature, feminine in gender, whose glory we only catch a glimpse of, just the crest of a wave somewhere. Because of our constitutional restrictions, we only catch the 5 photographs of the universe that we have through 5 senses. And so these 5 senses are among a number of constituents. Sankhya, as a philosophy, gives us a wonderful categorization of 24 categories. And I actually put this on the board in advance of this, so that I wouldn't have to deviate from the screen. So you'll find all of this is laid out here. And if you added up the 24 categories, you can say spirit being is not included in that. But you'll see here, the mind, senses, and objects comprise 16 items. What the Bhagavad Gita does, and we'll read this just now, is it condenses all this into 8 things, 8 items. It's all based on this Sankhya system, and it gives us the opportunity. It's not the only place we find it. We find reference to it in the Kathopanishad. In the Kathopanishad we find there that there's saying this is superior to this, and this is superior to this, and this is superior to this. It gives us a ranking. It gives us the opportunity to progressively, like a step ladder, or climbing a mountain, or any other analogy you want to use, of progressively going inward and upward, as it were, and at the same time going more subtly, more immensely, and more truthfully to the reality, so that we have the opportunity, with all these categories, of progressing. Now, progression also is a kind of evolution. And so despite the fact that he says, among thousands of men, scarcely one strives for perfection, despite Jesus saying, be perfect as your Father in heaven, and of those who strive and succeed, scarcely one knows me in reality, nevertheless, we're confident everybody will evolve toward it. Why? Because there is an antiyaram, an inner controller that drives things from within, that is manifesting through these categories, and that produces species and forms of different kinds, different displays, like a wonderful display of colors and so on, when we see this pyrotechnic display, when we see this, the fireworks. The fireworks is a beautiful image because, you see, we hear a bang, and then we find a nucleus, and then we find a display outward, and then it's finished. And then again, another, a kind of individual, a kind of localized series of big bangs, if you like, going off. And the universe seems to be like that. It's ephemeral. And yet we are so mesmerized by it, by this Maya, and so enticed by it, that certainly among thousands of people, scarcely one even thinks about it. They're too much concerned with the daily things of life. So blessed are you, where you take an interest. And there's a caution, which sounds very disappointing, that even those who strive and succeed, scarcely one really knows me in truth. That is, scarcely one gets this vijnana, this realization. Nevertheless, we are told in many places that we go on. We go on our journey, on our pilgrim's way, until finally we reach our own inner glory. So the commentator says this, that is, Swami Bhagavad, the original word for perfection, he says, is siddhi, which is a comprehensive term, he says, connoting quite a number of meanings, all pregnant with great ideas. Fulfillment, accomplishment, complete attainment, success, the hitting of a mark, healing of a disease, coming to force, validity, payment, indisputable conclusion, solution of a problem, maturity, preparation, cooking, prosperity, good luck, bliss, beatitude, complete sanctification. Finally, emancipation, acquisition of supernatural yogic powers. See, in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, one chapter or one section is all to do with siddhis, powers, supernatural yogic powers. All these and more are indicated by this one word, siddhi. And included in that is the word you used in your question, see, and that is accomplishment. So all of that is termed as siddhi. But is that what we mean? So he says it may be noted that people are all striving for this achievement, and I'll put parentheses there, of the one or the other of these features, and among them he who aspires for the attainment of the divinity stands supreme according to the Lord. You see, all of us are striving for something. And even though it may be for some kind of motive, everybody wants power, everybody wants happiness, everyone wants some stability. See, the Maslow hierarchy of needs is very telling. It tells us we seem to all want a sense of security, some housing somewhere to rest. We all want shelter, we all want food, we all want financial security and so on. All of these are present. Just to test it out, you might catch somebody and say, if we take all these things away, will you be happy? You see, what we call happiness is normally a negative term. We're happy as long as we don't have arthritis. Or we're happy as long as our bank account is full. Or if there's a financial difficulty or a struggle or some kind of crisis, and then you say, so are you happy now? No. So I'm happy now, but I may not be happy in the next moment. And if I look back on my record, I find there are moments where I was unhappy. So all the time it's a kind of maintenance to maintain the status quo so that these periods or these particular instances of unhappiness don't come to us. And so there's an urge to avoid that, to move toward things which we seem to do, which give us what we deem to be pleasurable, away from things which we deem to be painful, without necessarily it being true. Things which we deem to be pleasurable are not necessarily pleasurable. They may give us pain in the long run. But we learn from it anyway, and this learning process we call evolution, the constant unfolding from within. So the optimistic side of this is that the whole universe is evolving toward that. Swami Vivekananda says even an atom is moving toward its own freedom. So he continues, it may be noted that people are all striving for this achievement, for the one or the other of these features, and among them he who aspires for the attainment of the divinity stands supreme according to the Lord. We find the Bhagavad Gita is so closely linked with the Katha Upanishad, and there we find the story of Nachiketa, how even as a boy he makes a solid decision. He sees the shallowness of what normally people enjoy. And he's offered various things. We can update it and put it in modern language. Offered many cars, for example, audio systems, and all kinds of things that we value today, particularly in an age of technology. Then he goes on to say the higher the ideal, the harder is the achievement of it. You agree? Be perfect as your Father in heaven is a very high ideal. Perfection. Perfection means not a single flaw. For that matter, not a single ceiling. So, absolute perfection. Perfection means there's no struggle in it. There's a constancy about it. There's a steadiness about it. Pitfalls are too many in the path of divine perfection. It comes to my mind, that song, Mano Chalo. See, that Narendra sung to Sri Ramakrishna. He said, why do you linger in this foreign land? And we can imagine the song relating to somebody on a pilgrim journey up a mountain or up a hill, with various robbers on the way, and good rest huts along the way in the form of holy company, holy people, scripture, guidance, things which assist and help us. But we have to always be watchful that there are things which will rob us of our freedom and rob us of our journey and distract us and deviate us from our single goal. So it's maybe coincidental that we are also studying Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and in that we were studying this concept of ekagra, this one-pointedness that is necessary to cultivate. And up until then, all conditions of the mind have all been nothing to do with concentration. Concentration means taking all the energy that you have and steering it in one direction. You can make another definition. Concentration is a sense of absence of time. When you no longer have a feeling of time, when you feel that, it's this time or that time. Time is a way of evaluating a series of changes. We can put it in this way. So, with this idea of time, no concentrated effort is there. This ekagra is necessary. And how easy is it for us to cultivate that? But we can do it by looking at the world and seeing it in a different way. Instead of seeing it as a struggle, instead of seeing it as a series of unfortunate things and looking at it negatively, a pool of misery, a veil of tears is the expression. Why don't we see it from God's point of view and see it as a joyful display? Why don't we see God's glory being manifested everywhere? Why do we miss this opportunity in a given moment, which is given to us by God's grace as a singular opportunity, a unit of time that we can put some higher thought in, some noble thought, and make it a series until that series dominates and saturates us, until it becomes our shining habit. So, competency for it, he says, is rarely found among people. The right attitude, the right understanding, the right adjustment, the right application. He puts this as a fourfold process. Let's examine that. The right attitude. What is the right attitude? Well, we've discussed how easy it is to have a negative attitude, a critical attitude, wanting things to change, making small adjustments. You hang a picture, look at it, and you'll be there for days making the right adjustment. There are people like that. We just hung a picture recently, and it could have taken days. All right.
No, I left the one in the kitchen wonky.
Oh, all right. Blessed are you.
Still wonky.
We still have an opportunity to correct it over many days. So, competency for it is really found among men. The right adjustment is needed. Right understanding, right attitude. Now, all of these seem to be Buddhist terms, by the way, because everything is phrased in the Eightfold Path of right livelihood, right thinking, right meditation, right attitudes, all of these things. But how do we know what is right and what is wrong? So when we think that something is right, it means that we have the capacity to correct something. Before we have the capacity to do that, or before we use it, then we should notice something going off. When you first drive a car, you may notice it veering off to the left. And you consciously adjust it. So everything that you do for the first time, where you see it going off, it requires conscious adjustment. And ultimately, when you drive a car, you'll see it is no longer done consciously. It is done unconsciously. The habit level takes over, and when you feel the car going off like this, you automatically correct it while talking, while thinking, while observing, while appreciating. No effort requires. Effortlessly, you can do it. So, having a right attitude means looking at life in a different way, seeing it as a series of waves. And so, in Sankhya, we find the key to all of this, to the mind, the senses, the objects, and all that, the key to all that is a series of waves, subtle waves, having characteristic of waves. These are called tanmatras, subtle elements. It is these subtle elements, these areas of God's grace, that come in a very subtle form, combine and recombine, and present themselves to us as this universe that we appreciate and see. Don't forget, the sense organs are also the sense objects, because they're made from yesterday's tomatoes, pasta, and so on. So they're as material as anything else. Mind over matter is a phrase that is often used. But the system, based on Sankhya, says really there's no difference. What we call mind is subtle matter. What we call matter is gross mind. And that's all included in all of this. And it all comes under the heading of Prakriti. Is all an expression, a manifestation, a display of Prakriti, nature. Sri Ramakrishna says this: the devotees who enter the temple of Mother Annapurna in Benares cannot get out of it without receiving some consecrated food in accordance with the wont. Some get it immediately, while the others have to wait long before blessed with it. It's the same thing if you get a visa or a residence permit. Some get it quickly, others have to wait. Depends when you book the appointment, but you'll get it. Some get it immediately, while others have to wait long before being blessed with it. But nobody is denied the privilege of obtaining it. In this same way, similarly, mukti, freedom, is assured for all. This is the positive side of it. And some get it in this very birth. Others have access to it after 2 or 3 births, while yet others have to wait and go through countless births before becoming competent for freedom. But all are destined for mukti, freedom, sometime or other. And when we say all, we have to be all-inclusive about it and think every atom is striving toward it. Why else would the universe move? Why would there be this dynamic aspect to the whole of life? You see, and I mentioned it so many times before, Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking, gave a wonderful example of how nature works. And nature being something that is not perfect itself. Why is that a necessary comment? It's necessary because if it was perfect, it wouldn't move. Nothing would move. Yeah? So he imagines filling the Cambridge dining hall there with ball bearings. And nothing moves because everything is so tightly packed. All these spheres, even those spaces in between, there's no maneuverability there. As soon as you provide space, it's a beautiful example because it introduced the concept of space. Why is space necessary? As soon as you introduce space, that is, as soon as you remove a few and make things uneven, things start gliding and shuffling, and we have a dynamic universe going on. And this dynamic universe, according to these categorizations, expresses itself. Expresses it first as a mahat, a cosmic mind, a great entity, a great one. This great principle, this mahat, is cosmic mind, the creative mind. It is the womb of all beings. And from this cosmic mind come these small tremors and variations, starting off with the very, very most subtle. We call this agasha. Unfortunately, and not very helpfully, interpreted as space. We can view it as a kind of, in energetic terms, we can view it as potential energy. And this potential energy, we find, expresses itself as all sounds. That means all vibrations. Sound is always there. We call it sound only when the ear catches it, or some ear catches it, not necessarily ours. Then we call it sound. For us, we register sound when the ear is there. But whether the ear is there or not, vibrations are there.
Is it that top one, Akasha?
Akasha.
Yeah.
So all ears come from it, naturally, because what's the point of having all sounds if there are no matching ears to catch them? So all sounds, all ears, that means all vibrations and all potentialities to catch it in a subtle body. And then Vayu, helplessly translated as air, doesn't help us at all. But what's the characteristic of air? It tends to pervade everywhere. We can't catch it. Give me a pocket full of air or give me a tub of air. Air is an all-pervading thing. It's inside, it's outside, it's everywhere. You can't catch it. And it's free. So far the government hasn't taxed it. So air, but it's not like that. It actually represents kinetic energy. And that kinetic energy, we find, comes out as all pressures, and at the same time, and we find the swing between kinetic and potential energy. If you swing a pendulum, you see, the pendulum goes to potential energy and then gravitational energy takes it, or it goes to, kinetic energy and then gravitational energy takes it, and then goes back. So back and forth between potential energy and kinetic energy. And when there are these combinations and recombinations that occur, finally they arrive. There's a border almost. Now modern science calls this border decoherence. Decoherence. Because it registers that above that, in the wave aspect of it, it's all coherent. That means it's spread everywhere. And because it's spread everywhere, there's no fixity about it. And if there's no fixity about it, it's not our normal universe. Our normal universe seems to be fixed. But see, I'm introducing scientific language and introducing Vedanta language as well. Seems to be. It seems to be there. See? The great mystery is how do we get from being, that's at the top, pure spirit, to becoming? What is the process? So the process is there. It's the appearance, the apparent manifestation of it. Vivarta is what we call it. Maya. Maya means there's a fact that there's a paradox. Things are not what they seem. Now, the more we understand this in science, the more you would think we then come to this fundamental conclusion. Whether you believe in God or not, at least you can say that this world is shaky. This world is not permanent. This world has no fixity about it. So if the Buddhist approach will be like that. It says this whole world is a flux. It doesn't say there's anything permanent necessarily, but it says that the whole world is a changing flux. Therefore, in a category of not real. Not real means not permanently existent. Existent for a moment, momentarily so. Comes and goes. And its forms change also. And so therefore we can't really put it in a category of permanency. So what does the Gita say? It explains this in this term. It gives this knowledge of an aspect of this overall divine entity. It says, Bhume apo nalo vayuha kam mano buddhi evacha ahankara iti yam me bina prakriti ashtata. Bhumi, earth. You see, it's put in these terms, which unfortunately can be confused. But earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then it goes on mind, intellect, and egoism. Thus is my prakriti, nature, divided eightfold. Is a condensed version of the Sankhya categories. So we have to understand what that means. You see, if we say earth, water, fire, ether, and so on, you say, but what? Earth, these 5 things, but what about these 16 things here? What about the senses? What about the objects? Are there not 5 senses? Are there not 5 objects? If we take the objects, and not only 5 senses, but another 5 senses, 10 senses overall, because we have a receptive faculty and a reactionary faculty. Series of those, 5 and 5, 10. What about those? Well, the inference is, never mind about that, that's just how they've condensed and combined for our viewing, you see. But what they are really is, they're just combinations of these subtle elements. There's no real difference. They just condensed and arrived here in this decoherent manner, in the language of quantum physics or quantum mechanics. This decoherence, they arrived at us. We're only seeing it. A great scientist who happens to be an atheist, a man called Sean Carroll, when asked a question, this duality that we find in particle physics, is it a particle or a wave? Or a wave particle? Most people will answer it's both a wave and a particle, but then he whispers, but actually I'm telling you, it's a wave, but as seen by us, it's a particle. See this language?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? There's the same language that was realized in these ancient times. So we've condensed all this into 5 elements. And then we come across the next portion, which is mind. What is mind meant here? Mind comes out as this egoism, and then we find this mahat is there as intellect or buddhi. And finally, egoism. Egoism refers to this single entity in this language, which is Prakriti itself.
I thought you said Mahat is universal mind.
Cosmic mind.
Cosmic mind.
Yes,
So why does it all then refer to Buddhi as well?
because buddhi is the same thing. Buddhi means the shining faculty of mind, if you like, cosmic mind. So this shining faculty, this buddhi.
In Patanjali Yoga Sutras, is that what it means as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes. This is derived from Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Is derived from the Sankhya system, and this is system of categories.
So it doesn't come from your own mind, Buddhi.
We have this illusion that we have our own little box called a mind.
No, I know you have,
Yeah.
but you have manas, but then your discerning mind is part of universal mind.
You see here in the categorization, this mind is put in this below this line here. But real mind is cosmic mind. Like the real BBC broadcast is one broadcast. They don't deliver an individual broadcast to your house.
Oh, I understand that.
It
but
doesn't
it's-
arrive by DHL.
In the Yoga Sutras, it refers to the different aspects of what is mind. So when he refers to Buddhi, that's not something inside your that's part of your
No.
mind. That's universal. Or,
No, when you're describing the geography of your individual, so-called individual mind,
yeah, 'cause you have
Then
a
it's-
discerning mind.
yes,
right?
then
You
it's
observe
put-
manas.
then it's put in this way, all right?
Yeah.
But all of this is below the mind, below this line, but
Okay.
don't forget it's all a reflection of one thing.
Okay.
It's all, like we were traveling yesterday, we saw a beautiful rainbow.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So the sun, you can say, put it this way, give the sun some consciousness. The sun decided to fragment itself for our pleasure and joy to see all these different rainbow colors, and equally takes it away at the last moment. All right?
Mm. No, I
So,
understand.
so what is the fragmenter in all this? Mind is the fragmenter in all this. It's because you cannot fragment the Supreme. So it seems to be like that, seems to be fragmented in this way. This seem language is the language of Maya, which we have to introduce in all this explanation.
Why is unmanifest next to Prakriti?
Because Prakriti is unmanifest, is avyakta. You
Well,
see,
it's manifest.
it manifests, no doubt, yes. But in itself, you see, what is Prakriti combined with? Combined, it's a combination of 3 potentialities. We call these gunas. So when nothing moves, so imagine now Stephen Hawking's hall with all the ball bearings there. This is called Prakriti. But then you see when we take some away and things shift and glide, it's still Prakriti.
Okay.
It's just one is manifest and the other unmanifest. So there's a potentiality. That's why in our earlier conversation, to think, you see, in terms of a linear progression, we start here, we finish off here, and there are stepping stones of the way, may have a convenience to it. But actually, it's not that, because the Vedanta, based on Sankhya and so on, says Prakriti is eternal. There's no beginning, no end. There may be a pause, just like waves coming in and in an ocean. Waves come in, waves go out. You breathe in, you breathe out. The cosmic breath goes out and gets suspended. A kind of kumbhaka in yogic pranayama terms, you see. A kind of, a withdrawal into a potentiality. Now we can relate it even further, although it's not really our scope at this point to do that. And we can say that drama gets replayed in your own life, in this waking dream and dreamless sleep. We have it. So when we have this dreamless sleep, we have this potentiality. And what we call Ishvara, Prakriti, same thing, is this ruling entity there that governs this state of, this state of mere consciousness, that is consciousness as of a kind of peace. But it's a blankness, no distinguishing characteristics, no time or space in it, no causation within it.
But is this
And yet it has a causal element within it, a will, if you like, to project forth. In the human experience, projects forth into dream, then into dream, and into waking state, like that.
Is it a mistake to think of Ishvara Prakriti as personal, like says in the Isha Upanishad, or that's like, is it really a set of laws, or a set of how creation happens, that it it's giving you the blueprint of creation?
No,
but it's not necessarily personal. That's just because we see things in that way, because we identify ourselves with our bodies and with our
absolutely
things.
personal.
So then
There's scope for personal and impersonal here. But you see, this is leading us to what is more personal than a beautiful manifesting entity that provides for us, that sustains us. Here you'll find it in the 7th chapter. I am this, I'm sapidity and water, I'm this, I'm that, and that. See, when we see that immanently within everything, it evokes a feeling of wonder and thankfulness and adoration. And it's entirely personal. So this leads us up. You see, the first thing we have to do is, what is this entity? How glorious is this entity? Do we have a complete picture of this entity? Is it the only the one thing or the other? Is it the transcendent or the immanent? Or is it both? So we have to take the sum totality of it. We have to take this Prakriti as God, with the inference of the supreme unmanifest that we call in Vedantic language Brahman. So there's that supreme nature. He's about to say, 2 natures are there. We're discussing the one nature.
but is it
The other,
like
the other nature
below
is the transcendent unmanifest.
Because it's not.
We're
it's
only,
not Brahman.
you have to understand, for our understanding, we're just putting lines here.
yeah
Yeah?
yeah
Only so you can grasp some things here. See?
yeah
All right?
yeah no I'm
Yeah.
I'm struggling
But
with it.
no, of course you're struggling, because the reality is only through vijnana, a realization. What are we now doing now? We're just seeing how does it work out, from an intellectual point of view. How is it? What are the categories here and there, and so on and so forth, explaining that. But of course you have to do practice now.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah
And the practice then is to realize this. Now, why is this displayed like this? It's displayed so that we can go backwards, as it were. We can go into a state of devolution. We begin here, this is evolution described here.
yeah
What we need to do is devolution, that is go
Go back
backwards.
from the mind,
Yeah.
senses, objects.
So, so
up,
what we're doing, these categories are there purely. The Katu Upanishad there, the commentaries are there, which says these are presented, these rankings are presented.
But I mean, everything
This hierarchy is presented
entered.
so that we can then take a journey.
Yeah. But the journey is really only apparent because it's all already
Never
here.
mind about apparent. This is apparent,
No, but it's
you're
already
taking it as
no,
a
but
reality.
it's already here, perfect. But we
Yeah.
don't see it that way. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying we see it that way. But
Yeah.
I mean,
You see,
it is
you
already
see,
here, full and perfect.
you see, we have to have an understanding, but we also can't say, if you want to make a table, you can't say to a carpenter, I'm sorry, I want to make a table. Never mind about the dimensions, because this is all actually atomic structures and waves and so on and so forth. So don't worry.
Yeah.
A carpenter is no use. He wants
Yeah.
dimensions. What kind of solid wood do you want?
Yeah.
So there's we have to say,
We're
where are
starting
we?
down there. Yeah.
you see. So where are we now? Where should we be?
His way is good though. You just like, I just go to the pub because it's all here. Like,
No,
really.
not that I didn't actually say.
But I like that.
I didn't. But what I mean is that it really is all here. If you think you're
This-
down
this
there,
is as-
it's where
this-
you think you
you
are.
see-
If you think you're down there.
You see, it's a
and then-
mistake for non-dualists to say and dismiss this world as non-real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree
All
with
right,
that.
we're not non-real.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you knock your head on a wall, don't tell me it's not
Yeah.
real pain. And don't tell
Yeah.
me there's no dent in the wall. Depends how hard the head is. So that's
It's relatively real, isn't it?
relatively
It's
real.
relatively
It's
real.
in relation to your senses, in relation to
Mm.
the nervous system with which you knocked your head.
Mm.
This is hard relative to my knuckle.
Yeah.
But for an elephant's point of view, it's like matchwood. So relative means it's relevant to something. And in our case, everything is related to this lower aspect. And that means we only catch the very lowest aspect of this mother nature, this Prakriti. Revealing these lower things to us is important and significant because it gives us the clue, the flavor, the signpost to experience an increasing joy.
Yeah.
The more we delve into this comprehensive nature, the more we find an openness, like a flower opening. A flower, when it opens, we can personalize it and say, if I was a flower and decided to open, it's so that I can be much more generous in spreading my scent, in spreading my display of beauty. So an opening is a generous position, increasingly generous, loving position. And our compassion and love and purity increases, commensurate with the purity of the mind, which acts as an opening catalyst. And progressively I open, and I can take this journey. So the next realization will be, this is how God looks in its subtle form, subtle waves. Very nice. Then how does it look beyond that? It looks like a cosmic mind. And how does it look beyond that? It looks like the sum totality. And then how does it look beyond that? It looks like what we describe here as only, with an apology, Sat Chit Ananda. It's existence itself, consciousness itself, bliss itself. And all the others, why should there be? All of this is only because things look existent, because things are existent. Things look conscious because they are conscious. Things look happy and blissful because things are blissful.
It's the fullness of things
But-
that's hard to see.
Yeah. Well, of course, because can you ever see a totality? Being restricted, you see that story of the blind people who go to explore the elephant. No one's quite sure if it's Buddhist tale or Hindu tale or whatever, but anyway, it's well known. Some people have said, oh, Socrates said it. Whoever said it doesn't matter. The message is there. But sometimes the subtlety of the message is not gotten.
Sorry, Swami, what was the message that Socrates said again?
No, I don't know if he said it. Whoever said
Yeah,
it.
but what was the message?
I think
the elephant.
Yeah,
The
I
elephant.
think the most famous person who said it was a Nani Mouse. So these people go and explore this elephant,
What's
and naturally
elephants?
being dimensionally deficient, being blind. Are we not all blind? Is blindness not our synonym for ignorance?
A nonny blind mouse.
A Nani blind mouse. So the story isn't complete because supposing they are sighted, they are not seeing the totality of the elephant alone. Because they're seeing the totality of the elephant and they're also seeing the space beyond it. So the total vision will be all of this, the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Don't worry about about this totality. Worry first about where am I now and what is my next step. So that is the practical spiritual dimension to this. All right.
Sorry to, it's not really an important question, but why have you put ears and shins and eyes then above what? Because I don't understand that.
Skins, eh?
Well,
Skins,
whatever it is.
skins,
Because that's not like you've got mind senses objects below, then these are. I understand sounds precious. Why have you put ears and shin? And
Because that's what it manifests as.
that's what it manifests as.
Yeah. But this is not the ears that go below here, below this line. This is the subtle body.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the waves manifest in this way and ultimately condense into the creatures that we see, including yourself, that has a capacity to catch sounds.
Oh, okay.
But these are not standard organs.
Just kind of an example.
They're not standard organs. So the point is that everything is a series of divine, glorious waves. These tanmatras are waves of divine grace. Then what is this world that appears? Divine grace condensed. Do we catch it like that? Do you understand it like that? No. Does it require training to value it like that? Yes. What is spirituality? Learn to revalue things in this way and see God and see the self within everything and in everything, through everything, ultimately as everything, and finally beyond.
Yeah.
So we finish off there then. I'll read the commentary and then we're finished for this evening. So he says, Apariyam itas tvanyam prakritim vidi me param jiva bhutam mahabhyo yaye dam daryate jagat. This is my lower nature. What I've described here, these categories, is my lower nature. But different from it, no. O mighty armed, the one who has the capacity now to know and realize, because you're well equipped, as we all are, my higher nature, the life element by which this universe is upheld. This, what I've put here as spirit being, this is the higher nature. And so we can't conclude with what we had concluded with. That is a wonderful place to conclude with for this session, that we have to understand this seeming division between the lower nature and the higher nature. The bulk of what we have is put in, but it's the lower nature. And even the lower nature is so vast, even if we look at it from an astronomical point of view, cosmological point of view, can you ever grasp the immensity of this universe? And so what to speak of the transcendent aspect, which is the higher nature, the higher Prakriti. It's worthwhile just reading this commentary, and then we'll leave it. All the 5 elements and the 3 internal organs put together form the inferior constituent of the Lord. The cosmic life principle, or the sum total of the Jivatman, is his superior constituent. An example elucidates this truth. The smoke that emanates from fire is its lower nature, and the spark its higher nature. You get the example. The characteristics of the fire are in the sparks, while its action is in the smoke. Technically put, the smoke is the tatastha lakshanam, the accidental definition of the fire and the spark, the swarupa lakshanam, the form-filled one, the shining one, the more immediate one. Knowing of the spark is equivalent to knowing of the fire. Pure consciousness, which is the Paramatman, is inherent in the Jivatman also. The spark is that which has separated itself from the fire. She equated to a spark of the divine. You've heard that phrase, spark of the divine. But the Jivatman is not and cannot be dissociated from the Paramatman. Fire is fire, whether it's a spark or mainstream. As a wave in the ocean, another example, the individual soul is ever in the cosmic soul, though with its limiting adjuncts. Limiting adjuncts, with a different interpretation, English interpretation, you can say, you see, it's a limiting adjunct on one side, but on the other side, it's a manifesting adapter. And so, appreciating its manifesting nature leads us to devotion. You see, this light bulb is a limiting adjunct to electricity, but it's actually a manifesting adapter, so we can see this. Looking at this manifesting side is one view. Looking at it as seemingly a limiting adjunct is another. Upadi is the technical term. The Jiva Prakriti, or the Kshetrajna, the knower of this field, and multiple fields also, is utilizing the Jada Prakriti, or the Kshetra, this field, as its body, and upholding it too. We learn about Kshetra, Kshetrajna, after this series to do with, or associated with bhakti, and then we go on to the 13th chapter, and there we find a whole chapter to do with this duality, seeming duality of the knower and the field. So this act of the conscious principle of upholding, that is like the agasha containing in itself all the other four elements, because you see these look separate, but actually agasha holds all the others. It's like Russian dolls, one within the other. And so it's not that agasha is done away. That is why I put this combination. The combination is seen to be half of one and 1/8 combination of the others. And then as that goes on, again is the half and one. So like that, there's a recombination continuously. So you'll always find it's not that agasha stands alone. Agasha is in all the elements, vaya is in all the elements, like that. We'll finish off there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all and every being.